out of what we're doing. So right now you are tuned into the Hub Studio Talk, where we have some 3 wonderful producers in the local area that are going to share from their experiences about, well, I guess life in the studio and what to expect. We have Colin Ward, who you, all the way from Burlington, Ontario.
That's right.
We have Johnny Gonzalez, all the way from Oakville, Ontario. That's right. And Tony Paiano, I hope I'm saying that right. Tony Paiano, okay, I tried. All the way from Toronto, Ontario. So say hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Wonderful to see you all. And our host tonight is I'm here helping out, but as an artist, but we're having a host of Daryl Dewick, who, you know, there's a familiarity. I'm Cheryl Dewick, he's Daryl Dewick, and yes, we are married. This is my husband, who is very strong in the technical industry, well known in the technical industry. His primary expertise is camera operator. He's a live camera op, but today he's not behind the camera, he's in front of the camera, and he's going to be asking a lot of questions, but I'll interject too. So I
will allow you to do that.
Thank you. So I want to say welcome to all of you for watching, and I hope you got your popcorn and your beverages, and you're going to sit back and you're going to learn. So I'm going to hand it over to Daryl and ask your questions, Daryl.
Okay, well, I'm actually not going to start off with a question first. I'm going to do a little bit of a role play. And I'm going to pick up my phone, and I'm going to dial and go, hi, is this the studio? I have like 12 songs I want to create into an album and make like millions of dollars. Can you help me? Right? Like, to me, that is a classic question that happens all the time. What is your response to that?
Colin, what would you say?
Everybody's paused thinking, wow, how do we do this without getting in trouble?
Yeah, if I knew what to do a million-selling album, I wouldn't be sitting in my basement.
Okay, how would you help the artist? Because obviously this is probably the first song or first time they've stepped into the studio. How would you walk them through the very, very first thing of, I'm walking into a studio?
Yeah, you try to identify what they want after when the CD is done. What are they going to be happy with what the end product is going to look like for them? Do they want just a piano and voice track? Do they want me to layer some stuff in? Do they want me to bring some live musicians in to add to it? And I guess the other side of it, I like to make sure that it's somebody that I'm going to be able to work with, that I can communicate with, and whose expectations aren't ridiculous. Because if all they're looking at to make money, you know, that's not the best goal. They have to like to love to do music, which is what's kept me doing it.
Johnny?
Well, much of what my colleague here said, basically have a meeting with the artist and see what they want out of the project, right? Have a listen to their demo if they have one. If they have nothing at all, like even a voice, something recorded on a phone, get an idea of what it is that they are looking for. What is their vision of the project? And yeah, see if you know, you're comfortable working with each other. And then the expectation also is what it is that they hear in their head. Well, how is it that they want it to sound like in the end? Because it has to be kind of a match. The artist and the producer sort of have to be along the same path, the same signal, the same path. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, no, I was just going to finish off by saying that there has to also be a little bit of trust. You know, that little bit of trust needs to be born there, because you're going to be doing some things that they might, you know, not be comfortable with or be used to hearing before. Maybe you have an idea of taking them in a different direction, possibly, and they might, you know, it's good if they're open to that.
And Anthony, your take on that whole scenario that happens on probably a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I try to establish something right from the phone call, so that we're not wasting each other's time in terms of what expectations they have. I try to touch a little bit on the budget, because a lot of times they may not have a realistic perspective as to what's involved. So you want to give them some idea as to what's the cost, so that they have an idea of what they're getting into. And, you know, once you have a basic idea of where they stand, you try to set up a meeting, come down and see the studio so they can actually get a feel for the place. And you also get a feel for them, because sometimes you may not be compatible. Sometimes there might be some personality clashes, and especially if you're going to be working on 12 songs, that's going to take up a lot of time. You're going to be spending a lot of time with that individual. They might not like you. You might not like them.
No,
realistically, you know, there's got to be you got to have a connection there. And so I think getting together and then talking about the project, sometimes they'll bring you some ideas, some songs, some other tunes that they've recorded, so you can get an idea of what they sound like, you know. So yeah, I think you know, just trying to, in my case, I like to try to get as much just from the phone call, just to start with, and then from there have a meeting, and then we can talk further.
Okay, very good to know that. Now, we're going to continue down some more of those paths, but I think what's going to help, because this is probably, well, we're actually already getting questions about what needs to happen before we step into the studio. So I think before we even get there, I'd like to clear up a few definitions. What is a producer? What is a mix engineer? What is a guy who creates beats? A guy who does mastering. I think those are probably cover a good chunk of it, and a recording engineer. What are those? Are they still relevant today in the fact that most of us are DAW? And then we'll answer, we'll find out what DAW is about in a minute or two. Well, what are those? What are those 4 or 5 key points for definitions? And are they still relevant?
I don't know. I think a lot of us are wearing all those hats at the same time at times. Yeah. The one thing I can master here, but I would, if it's somebody that's really serious, I'm going to send them off to get it done properly, because I've had that done for my stuff as well. And they're a lot better than I am, for sure. You know, but the other stuff, you know, you come into a studio my size, you don't expect 4 guys to be sitting around one keyboard trying to figure it out.
But what do they do? What does a recording engineer do that's different than a producer, different than a guy who does mastering?
Well, I think as far as the roles are concerned, producer usually the person who has the vision. He's sort of like the director of a movie, but a producer sort of takes the role of in a music situation. He's or she is the person who will take the artist and their concept and bring it into the real world, right? It's sort of manifesting it, right? Engineer obviously is the guy who's the technical person. He's the one who usually does all the, you know, presses all the buttons. What was the other role? The producer,
Master engineer.
Master engineer. Master engineer, kind of the same sort of role as an engineer, although they're a little bit more tuned in to other aspects of the final recording. They usually have different tools that they work with. But over the years, those roles have sort of changed. It used to be, you know, like, you know, 10, 20 years ago, they used to be very specific roles. Each one had a role. That's sort of evolved in the sense that one person usually wears all the hats, kind of thing, right? For just to keep a studio going, it's obviously from a budget perspective, we've all sort of learned how to do all of these roles. In a perfect world, it'd be great, you know, somebody who's so specific in one area, but that world has sort of changed. I mean, it still exists, you know, on certain levels, but on the majority, I think everybody will agree that we all sort of take on all those roles.
Anybody else have anything else to add to that?
Well, yeah, just basically that the industry has changed so much, as Anthony was saying, that that everybody's doing home studios now. Everybody seems to be having home studios and bringing the studio to their homes, as you see behind me, and that's just for economic reasons, as Anthony was saying, and just to keep the studio going.
Okay. So one of the things you keep hearing people discuss is because there's going to be a lot of people watching who are just starting out trying to do their stuff, because they're going to probably try and record a few things at home in their own personal studios, and they're going to ask, what's a DAW? What do I need? What do I not need? So what is a DAW? Is there one brand that I should buy or I shouldn't buy?
Are you talking from the perspective if somebody chooses to do their own project, record their own project?
I think probably somebody who's starting off, who's going to start doing something at home originally, because as you're you're all professional studios, and I think before they walk into there, if they're writing something down, even just scratch tracks with an acoustic guitar and their vocal, I'll even say this: what do they need?
So in terms of a digital audio workstation, DAW,
Okay.
right? I mean, there's so much to choose from, right? It depends a lot, I think, on the person and how technical savvy they are, right? Some are not geared that way. You know, let's say they might be just a songwriter. That's their vision. They're very good at that, or a great singer. If they start getting into the whole technicality of things, they might get lost, and they might lose the whole the inspiration behind what they're trying to do, because there's so much to learn, and there's so many elements that go with it to be able to accomplish it all. But some people they have that sort of that skill set. They're sort of geared that way, that they're very technical, and so that might be something that they might be able to pursue in terms of, you know, picking up a few pieces here and there, and then eventually, I mean, that's what we all did. You know, we started with a Porto studio. Do you guys remember that? The four track.
Yeah, I had one.
Yeah, we all started there, right? So for some, you know, they can take it from one level to another. For some, it's not really their thing, and it just becomes very frustrating on some people. So you're better off hiring someone if you want to do it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the different genres, and I sort of, with my clientele, I get dragged into different things, and people that are making beats, they're pretty much using Ableton or FL Studio. For myself, I use Logic because I have a Mac, and it's a lot cheaper than buying the other ones, and I like working that. So if I'm doing electronic music, I use Logic. You can't beat Pro Tools for editing live music. So I do all my mixing as well in Pro Tools. I like that as well.
If somebody now has bought their little setup to record their scratch tracks or their basic tracks, they find out that they can't get the sound that they want, how would they send the files to you, or what would they do? What's their next step?
Well, it kind of depends on what DAW they have. I don't want to say industry standards, but most studios use Pro Tools, most people use Pro Tools. Not that it's better than any other DAW. It's just that's been the choice for I don't know what reason. And if it's not in a Pro Tools format, you can export the session into WAV files that can be either emailed or shared on a cloud somewhere. And then you can open it up in your studio and see what you have and build from there if the quality standards are acceptable.
Okay.
Right, and to add to that, as far as quality standards, I think that's the
Broad term?
that's the important thing to qualify, because if somebody's doing it on their own, not only do they need a workstation, they also need the right, microphones, preamps, and et cetera, to be able to accomplish a decent audio track. Now, if they're doing something that's MIDI based and they're using loops and all that sort of thing, then that's a lot more as far as transferring and sending it to another studio to enhance and add to it, right? Because it's all in the digital domain. But if you're doing some recording where you're doing it at home and you're doing all your vocals and you're doing all your audio files, that could be a bit of a unless they know what they're doing and they've got the right equipment to be able to accomplish that. Sometimes it's just better to go directly to the studio and get it done right.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, can I step in as an artist? Okay, you just said that we need to come to the studio to get it done right, but I'm just going to jump in and ask. I'm an artist who doesn't know anything about the technical side. So if we're coming to you as the studio, what are some of the things we need to know before we come to you? What are some of the things that would be the ideal thing that we would come prepared with to come and meet with you, to come and actually work with you? What are some of those things?
So now are you talking from the perspective of a songwriter or a band?
All of the above. As a singer, okay, as a singer, songwriter, I come with you with my songs, just like as Daryl kind of role played, he role played hi, I have 12 songs. I want you to make them sound nice so I can record them and send them out somewhere. What do we do? I mean, sometimes when we call, we really don't know what you do. So help us out. What is it that you would need from us to make your jobs a whole lot easier?
That's a loaded question, actually.
That means we have a lot to do, don't we?
I think the starting point is that they have to be well rehearsed with their song. You don't want them to come in and then get everything set up and they say, well, what key should we do this in? Let's try a few, or things like that.
Okay, so that's for a band. They should already be rehearsed and ready to go.
Yeah. It's called pre-production, when you get everything down, your arrangements, all the rest of that stuff.
Well,
Okay.
when I'm working with songwriters, what I tell them is a few things I tell them to bring when we first meet. One, obviously, the written song. Sometimes they have some musical knowledge, so they may have some chording, the harmony, either off from a guitar or a piano. So they've written out their lyric and then they've added their chord that go with the lyric. Just simple sheet. I asked them to bring me some other audio samples that they have listened to, other artists, for instance, that they think that their song should be kind of like that within the genre, so that as you're creating the song, you have sort of a guide, right? Opposed to, you can go to so many different directions, right? So then other things like the key that they want the song in, they should know that. The tempo that they want the song. Of course, all those things can change once you actually meet and you actually start going through the process. You might suggest things. As a producer, you're going to suggest things like saying, well, you know, that might be a little too high for you, or maybe we should change the tempo, or, you know, you make suggestions. And so I think by them bringing a lot of these little things with them will fine tune the direction of the song. Now that's a singer songwriter. A band is usually a different story because they've already been working together on a song. They have the song. Their job now is to come to the studio and record it. But they should be rehearsed and really know their stuff very well so that it becomes it doesn't become a rehearsal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You come to record, not to practice.
Pretty much.
Right.
I mean, you know, they can. It'll just cost more money. That's all.
As a studio owner, it's a billable hour. It's a billable item.
Oh, sorry. Your original question was what not to do?
Yes. As a singer-songwriter or as a band walking into a studio.
I think the person should be open to they should be transparent and not feel because they've created this song. They probably feel that they just gave birth, and it's very, very it's very touchy in the sense that, you know, if you start making suggestions, I think they need to be open enough to accept some criticism in order to make it better. Because if you come into the studio already with the attitude that this is it, you know, the song is done, this is my baby, and I want to do it this way, you know, at the end of the day, you know, sure, they're the ones who are paying for the service, but I think if you're trying to get the best and trying to get as much mileage out of the song, don't feel so be open to suggestions.
The auto-tune, how prominent now is that in today's recording?
Standard.
It's virtually everywhere.
What can and can't you do with it?
Well, I mean, if you're using it as an effect, which a lot of country artists are doing today, yeah, I mean, you can do it tastefully but it doesn't do miracles. It doesn't.
I think it is somewhat of a standard. I mean, I do occasionally get singers that come into the studio where, you know, they've got such great pitch where it's not necessary, and they don't want to use it. They just want it to be authentic, right? So there is still that authentic perspective that some people don't want to be associated with something that had to be used to fix. They'd rather go back and adjust and make the overdubs and fix the parts, right? But however, you know, the people, the listener, they're so used to hearing things the way where things are so precise. Like you go back even 30, 40 years ago and you listen to some recordings, you can hear the pitch, you know, it's flat, sharp, just a bit, right? And so people, the listener has gotten used to hearing things at a certain pitch, right? So, but like I said, I'd be some artists, they've got such great pitch that it's not necessary, but that's not the norm.
So the norm is what, 95% of the people need to use auto-tune?
I would say, you know, maybe 80% in my experience. But then there's some where even auto-tune won't work.
Well, Johnny, has that been your experience as well?
Yes, absolutely.
So you had to put auto-tune on a lot of your clientele?
Well, I mean, not everybody, but some people actually that do have, you know, decent pitch. They sometimes want to use that as an effect. Right. Some rappers do that. In country music, it's everywhere. And that's not to say that they don't know how to sing. that's not the point. It's you, if it, like I said earlier, if it's used tastefully, then, you know, sometimes it can be used just so slightly that you can't even notice it if you're not listening for it. But as Anthony was saying, that today everyone has gotten so used to that perfection that's available now in all the digital audio workstations, that, you know, it's sort of become the norm.
Colin, were you saying something or?
No,
Well,
no.
no, what I was going to say is that there are certain genres that tend to use it more than others. For instance, the hip hop rap scene, you know, they use it as an effect. It started years ago when Cher came out with that tune "Believes,"
Yeah.
right? And it sort of stuck around, and it gets used and you know, a lot in hip hop. I get guys calling me when they want to come to the studio, and they'll ask me, do you use auto tune, right? And my question to them is, okay, am I using it as an effect, or am I using it to fix your voice, right? Because most of them, in my experience anyway, they you know, they're used to just, you know, rapping, talking. Well, as soon as they start to sing, it's like, you need to get somebody else to sing, right? Because that auto correction will not fix that. Right? So
What's your experience, Colin?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I've had some people that come in that had perfect pitch until I played it back for them.
Oh,
And then how did you handle people? Because I'm sure you've had artists that have kind of said they thought they came in and they thought, hey, I'm really good at this. And then you played it back to them and they went, well, who's that? And why didn't you make me sound good? How do you handle that kind of an artist?
Yeah, I've never got to somebody that's been that aggressive, but I've had a few disappointed people, and some of them just went away and worked on it. And other ones, like I think Anthony or Johnny mentioned, is that you just retake everything. Like one of the tricks that I do is I'll auto-tune their original vocal, and then I'll have them come back and sing along to that. So then hopefully I have them singing on pitch.
that's a lot of work to make that happen.
Yeah.
well, for some people who are have never been in the studio, it is a bit of a an eye opener, or an ear opener, because it's a mirror. It's like a mirror, right? You come in, you sing your song the first time you've been in that environment, and all of a sudden you hear things a little different than you thought, right? Because you're using higher end equipment. It's clear. They hear everything, and then they can. In some ways, it's an educational process, because then they get to actually hear what they really sound like, and it may give them an opportunity to better themselves if they don't get discouraged during that process, right?
Yeah.
But as a producer, how do you encourage them, or do you encourage them?
What I do during the process is I try to, you know, help them along to get into the moment. What are they trying to say with the song? So if it's a ballad or a love song, I try to put them in that mind frame. What are you trying to say? Are you singing to a loved one? Are you singing because you're sad? And try to get into that mind frame so that it comes across in the recording. Because ultimately, you know, nothing beats a good performance.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree. What I usually do is I get the artist to come in and sing the song, you know, a whole bunch of times, and then I'll have them come into the listening area. I mean, they've been in the booth singing, right, with headphones. But then I want them to come into the actual and listen to the song from the speakers, and that way they can get a true perspective. And so once they hear it the first time, they'll get a perspective on it, and then they go back and do it again. But I try to focus on having them focus on performance, because I find if you start getting too technical, you kind of lose it, you know. So they really should know the song really well before they come to the studio. It has to be such a, it should take more than an hour and a half to do a lead vocal. If it goes past that point, unless they're doing a lot of overdubs and stuff like that, right? But if it goes past that point as a lead vocal, then it's going to lose the performance. It becomes more of a technical exercise. But yes, I agree. The performance is obviously the most important thing. And some of these people, they're coming to the studio, and maybe they're used to performing live, right? And now they're coming to a studio and there's no people there. Said me.
So you bring a good point up there, Anthony. I'm like one of those people. I've only had a couple opportunities where I've actually gone into the studio, and I'm used to performing live. So what would you say to someone like me? How would you help someone like me who has not been a person that's in the studio? Because you think, you're right. I'm so used to having an audience. I'm so used to having a whole group of people, or at least having a huge space to sing to. And then I come into a studio, which is, a smaller room, a smaller area. And my natural tendencies, I'll sing smaller. I'm not singing like I'm in the field. I'm not singing like I'm out in the audience. I'm singing, to me, it's all animate. It's like I have a microphone and I only have to sing to the producer. But really, the end product is you're trying to help us to sing as if we're singing to a large group of audience. So how do you help us with that? Like how, and not, this is to be any of you, how would you help a singer like myself who is so used to singing live, and all of a sudden we're brought into this room, that's squared off, that may have some padding and has a microphone, we're giving headphones. Like, how do you help us in that area?
Well, for me, one of the important things to note or to understand is proximity of the microphone. There's a thing that's called in recording a proximity effect. And the further you're away from the microphone, the more of the room you pick up. So it's my job as a producer, as an engineer, to sort of give instructions in a way that the artist can use that to enhance the performance.
I usually, when I get somebody coming in new to the studio, I like to sit down with them, and especially as they were talking about live versus recording, and just discuss with them the difference between live and recording. And when you're live, if you make a mistake, it's gone. 99% of the people didn't notice it, but if it's in the recording, it lasts forever. And the thing is, in the recording studio, that's not a big deal because we can just do it over again. And it's not something that doesn't happen for everybody that goes in the studio, no matter how good you are. You're not always going to get the best take in the first time out.
Right. And that's a bit sort of reassuring for the artist, because then they don't feel so pressured that they have to get it right the first time. What I try to do is I try to get them to think like an actor, right? You're performing, you're doing a role, but there's nobody around except a cameraman and a few people, right? So you have to create that mindset within yourself. It's almost like you've got to pretend that you are performing live to try to at least capture some of that emotion, because obviously live, you can't replace live, but you're trying to replicate that. You're trying to create that that performance, that emotional element in the song, in the performance of the vocals.
Yeah. I had one artist, I didn't get a good take until we turned all the lights off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then she relaxed.
Yeah. So lighting plays a big role too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know when Cheryl was in the studio, I was there with her, and there's a reason why I'm not a producer. She was having a hard time hitting her notes that she would normally get. And I just got on the talkback. The engineer was somebody I know, and I just said, I need the talkback. I said, hey girl, stop singing flat. Stand on your toes and pretend you're out in there or out in the field like you normally would be singing. And it changed her greatly, but she still was a little bit tight. And I actually looked at the engineer and I said to him can we shift the microphone, because it was down in front of her and she likes to use her hands. So she was limited in what she could move. I said, can we move the microphone? And I let him shift the microphone so that she had the hand movement. And it cleared up the tuning issues that she had, which was amazing. And it was great now, because now she had the freedom, and then she also had the performance-based.
I think also for me, what helped was the fact that even sound like the ambiance in my earphones made a difference, because then it did sound like, oh, I'm out in the open now, so I can sing to that. So that was very helpful too. I don't know what you did or what producers do for that, but kudos to you for what you do to make us comfortable. It's awesome. Johnny, you've been quiet. What do you do in a situation like that? You have your beautiful wife. For those of you who don't know, we are with 3 wonderful producers right now who are sharing their experiences and their knowledge about what they do in the studio and how they help people like us singers and songwriters get comfortable. Those who have not been in studios, how we get comfortable to be in a studio, to actually take our songs to the next step from being incubated with us to being put in a place where it can be publicized for everyone else. Johnny, one of our producers right here, we just asked the question, you have someone like me that comes, you have a beautiful wife who's an awesome singer. I've seen her on Facebook singing like crazy. And, you know, I'm sure she's used to the live setting. How do you make her comfortable besides saying, hi, honey, I love you? What do you do to make her comfortable so that she can sing in a situation where she's in a studio, or does she do studio work?
Yeah, I just give her a big kiss, and that just does it.
Okay, she probably wouldn't want you to do that with everybody else. So, okay, so someone like me comes in, do not give me a big kiss. My husband will intervene. What do you do? What would you do for someone like me who's been out in the field, who knows how to sing to an audience of, you know, a number of people, or even singing outdoors, and then I'm brought into a little room or to a studio, which for me seems like a little room. How would you make someone like me comfortable in your studio to actually sing?
Well, I guess the first thing I would do is to try to sort of identify that you're a live performer, and just put you in a setting where you just, you know, are free to move, like what your husband did for you, is move the microphone and do whatever it takes to get that person, you know, free and comfortable. I had a singer once that he was so like he's a very good singer, but he was so nervous in front of the microphone. I had to go back there a few times just to shift him around the room, maybe close the door, maybe, you know, did whatever it took to get the performance that I needed from him. I even had to speak to him, okay, now pretend that you're in front of a crowd, or, you know, pretend that whatever fitted the song is what I had to get him to associate so that he could give me a better performance.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that because we've been doing this for such a long time, that we forget that when somebody comes to the studio, could be their first time, and they're really, you know, they got their heart on their sleeve kind of thing, right? It's pretty intimidating. So they have to feel comfortable enough to know that you're there not to criticize them, but to support. You're there to enable them to achieve the goal that they're after, right? And so when you're behind the glass and they're on the other side and they're doing their thing, you have to try to create the right environment. You know, either lighting, you know, with headphones. Some singers like to have some reverb in there because it gives them a bit more of a wider sound. The volume that you play, the track or the certain instruments. There might be, if you've composed the song of, you know, a whole bunch of instruments, you might want to just bring up certain instruments and bring some of the other ones down, because maybe those instruments will enhance or put them into that space, right? You got to try different things to get the best. Ultimately, your job is to get the best performance from that individual. So I think most importantly is making them feel comfortable and not feeling like you're judging or criticizing or feeling like you're you know, you have to be their friend, right?
I think that's a very good point, because you're right. A lot of us, you know, you've been in the business, you've kind of been in that environment. So it's very easy to kind of assume, okay, here's another one, you know, whereas there's a
Yeah.
lot of us that do come in for the first time, or
Yeah.
we just don't have a lot of experience in the studio. So I think that's awesome that you say that, because what's really important for us to recognize is, as musicians, people who are kind of in the forefront, we are looking for that team to kind of back us up, to kind of say, you know, you're there to give us, to help us still sound good, you know, and to look good. You're on the same team. And I think that's very, very important. I've known some artists that they've given me some feedback, and I don't know how you would answer to this. They give feedback based on their experiences, and they said, you know, sometimes the producer came across very, I don't know, critical, or very arrogant, or very, you know, all they want is they want me to give them a whole bunch of stuff first, and they don't want to help me with my song, and that really isn't the case, is it?
Or is it the case that they're just trying to take the song and use it, or use them as a guinea pig and get paid for it?
No.
What do you say, Colin? What say you, Colin?
I'm not going to answer Daryl's question. What I was going to say is, one of the things that, if I've got an artist and they're struggling to get through the song and to get a decent take, is I'll just say, okay, let's work on the first verse. And we'll just work on the first verse. And if they have, I find that when they have 3 or 4 shots at the problem, the little problem area, then they can deal with it. But having a whole bunch to worry about going down it is too much. So we'll just do it, you know, verse by verse. I've done it line by line. I've done it just one word that they had to fill in, you know. But whatever, to me, it's whatever I can do to make them sound better, you know.
And that's kind of good. Anthony, do you have anything to add, or Johnny?
You're in the industry that we're in, because the world of recording has changed so much in the last 20, 30 years, that because the technology is there, that anybody can now go grab some gear, and all of a sudden they proclaim that they are a recording studio, right? But they may not have the experience, the people skills to go with. They may not even have the skill, but I'm just saying, the point being is, the people skill aspect is just as important, to know how to deal with people who, this is all new. You know, for a lot of people, it's the first time. It just, you have to be sensitive to, I mean, I've had many situations where people have brought songs that they just needed to, I mean, they were really excited about the song because they wrote it, but in terms of it being somewhat commercial based, it just didn't have the format, right? It was all abstract, and so you're trying to educate at the same time without insulting. So a lot of it is also having the experience to, because you're dealing with people, right? And mostly you're on when you're in that environment, people's emotions are really up there. Like they're naked, right? And so if you say something at the wrong time, it's like an arrow, right? So you have to be very sensitive to whom you're dealing with. Some people, they can handle the criticism. Some, they take it to heart. So you gotta know how to handle different personalities when they come into the studio. Because in our cases, it's usually a one-on-one scenario, right? Most of us work in that environment, or If it's a band, well, it's a different situation. But on a singer-songwriter, it's usually a one-to-one, me and the person, and we're working together to try to accomplish a goal, right? So it's being very sensitive at the same time.
That's very good. Like, that's such great advice, like, on both parties, both on the performer side and on the producer or the studio side. Yeah, personalities and having that people relationship is awesome. We have only a few minutes left, so I'm just going to ask this last question. Basically, what other advice? I know, Anthony, you gave some great advice. Johnny and Colin, do you have any advice that you would give? Maybe one do, one don't, for an artist and for the producers or the studio side. Are there any bits of advice, any last, I don't want to say last words because it sounds like you know, you're going to die. I don't want that. But basically, any bit of advice that you want to share with our audience? Colin or Johnny, whichever one wants to go first.
I just say make sure that you do your preparation before you go into the studio, because if you know what you want and can explain that to the producer and you know how to play the song, it's just going to be a better experience for everybody.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, preparation is priority for sure.
And that's prepping songs, making sure our talents are up. Is that
Yeah.
what you mean by prepping?
Yeah. Don't get up and drink. Have 2 lozenges and a glass of milk before you sing.
Oh.
And don't smash your guitar.
That's
Make sure
good.
you have the air freshener as well. After.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank all of you for being here today, to share your heart, share your thoughts on studio. I think a lot of people who watch this are gonna, you know, they need to see this. They need to know that you guys have got different experiences, and at the same time, you're there on our side. You know, you're not there to kind of cut us down. You're there to be on our side. We're here to work together. It's all part of the building the unity community. And with doing this, the mentorship and the talent growth. So I'm so happy that you all came. For those of you who are just tuning in kind of at the tail end of this, we have been talking here at GMI Studio talking with Colin Ward all the way from Burlington in his own studio, Johnny Gonzalez all the way from Oakville in his studio, and Anthony Paiano all the way in Toronto, not in his studio because he was expecting to be on his cruise ship, but he was here, and I'm so thankful for all that you have done, that you've contributed. Thank you so much. And of course, I'd like to thank Daryl Duick, who has been hosting, my husband. This was a first for him to be in front of the screen instead of behind the screen or behind the camera. So thank you so much, Daryl, for being here.
Pleasure.
Next week, we are going to be excited. We're excited to have another singer-songwriter version of the Hub Online. We're going to have Rochelle Luke and I keep saying her name wrong, Roseanne Baker Thornley. That's right. Roseanne Baker Thornley is going to be here to talk about songwriting and the methods that they use. So we hope you tune in for that. As well, we are working towards, we've been saying we wanted to do a workshop. Well, because of COVID, we can't really do a workshop per se, but we are planning to have an interactive Zoom meeting or an interactive webinar with one of our previous panelists, which is Doug Romano, who is a well-known, well-recognized and well-respected singer, songwriter, producer. He's worked with some very prominent artists in the music world. I just think of Justin Bieber as one of them, and there's a few others. He's also been involved as a music director with the Canadian Country Music Awards. So this guy, he's top notch, and yet he is willing to share his talents with all of you if you're interested. So to find out more about that, please go to gospelmusicindustryhub.com and go into our contact and send us a message, and we'll be happy to send that information to you. But for now, we want to say thank you to all of our panelists, our hosts, and all of you for joining us. You have yourself a great day.